3, 2, 1, and we're back. It's December 20th, the week of Christmas. And first of all, we have to put out our normal Sunday podcast warning. And I hope all of you take this really seriously. This is not our normal podcast.
It is not. This is not the weekly podcast, daily.
I'm quite certain all of our tens of thousands of listeners and all of our podcast awards and our recognition for this show and other things we've done is not predicated or based on our Sunday podcast.
No, definitely not.
Matter of fact, I can say with 100% certainty, if we were judged solely based on our Sunday podcast,
I don't know how that'd come out.
That would not go well for us.
No.
But look, the Sunday podcast is our opportunity to defrag from the previous week and really tool up for the following week. In this case, it's Christmas. So I'm going to start out by telling you guys some Christmas stories.
Oh, okay.
This is the reason I made sure that Miss Zoe isn't listening. All right, so why don't we tell them, our listeners, what our holiday tradition is for Zoe.
Oh, you mean when you know who shows up?
Yeah, so Zoe's 7. She was born on January 1st, and on New Year's Day. And so it wasn't until probably last year, maybe the year before, that she started to figure out that the holiday season wasn't in celebration of her birthday.
Right, that the whole world is not celebrating just for her.
Even though she went to, when she was in kindergarten and pre-K, and we were living in Texas, she went to a Catholic school. So that started to set her thinking straight. But still, I think this year is the first year where I've noticed she really differentiates the fact that we're not just, everyone in the world isn't just celebrating Zoe's birthday.
No, she's getting a little bit more into her saying is sharing is caring. So she wants, every day she's got to wrap new presents for people, and what can she give? And she made about 5,000 cookies we're going to distribute. So,
but think about this from a kid's perspective. So she's going to be 7 in 2 weeks, basically, and she's going to have constant barrage of presents because of all of her, aunts and uncles and grandparents and admirers.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So, but it lasts basically 2 weeks. I mean, she goes to Christmas and then it spreads into her birthday, and it's ridiculous. I mean, that is.
They're piling up. We
have to fight. They are piling up, and they arrive every single day. We have to fight to keep her not from being spoiled, but I think we've lost.
We have lost. It is official. But it is fun, too. She's calling herself Elf Zoe. So
Elf Zoe, that's right.
Pretty hilarious.
And she calls me Dada Elf. Or no, she calls me Elf Timothy.
Elf Timothy.
Yeah, she called me that yesterday. And she calls you Elf Julie. She actually called me by my whole birth name, actually, yesterday, too. She goes, Elf Timothy Carlton Harris. It's like
she's doing her North Pole pretending deal. So,
but here's what Julie and I do. Now, this is I don't know how this is going to go down if any of you are child psychology people. So we love to play with her because she's just so much fun. She's such a delight. And one of the things we have her believing is that we're all elves.
Or at least part elf.
Part elf, yeah. Part elf or full elves. And we do this year round. And it's a complete game of make-believe. She reads stories about it. She draws her elf family. And then she always will examine Julie and I's ears. And she's looking for elf ears. So she's never seen it. So she definitely believes it. And we keep on telling her, Zoe, as you get older, when you develop more of your elf self, that's what we call it, then you'll be able to actually start seeing other elves. And you'll see them because you'll be able to see their ears. You'll be able to tell they're other elves. And other elves then can see that you're an elf and the whole thing. And we've actually got other people in our community that are playing along too that, there's this gal named Nicole that takes care of Zoe there's this, they call it camp, but really what it is elaborate babysitting where they go and snorkeling and, surfing and all this crazy fun stuff. But we have Zoe believing that she's a mermaid.
Yes,
Nicole's
mermaid
a mermaid.
Yeah. They're all starting to collide, but yes.
So anyway, Julie and I got these, I found on Amazon these ears, I don't know what you call them. Elf ears. Yeah, they basically fit over the top of your ears. So in our house, in our villa here in Puerto Rico, Zoe and Julie were just sitting having some conversation. I'm sure Zoe was arguing about wearing shoes or something. And so then I walked past them just casually to go get the mail or I don't remember what. But I did it such a way that I definitely was acting nonchalant. And I had my elf ears on. And I caught her out of the corner of my eye. And I just looked through the corner of my eye long enough to see her jaw drop.
She froze in place.
So I walked into this. It was actually our foyer. I walked into our foyer, or whatever they call it in Puerto Rico. It's probably not called foyer. Something Spanish. Yeah. Hacienda de Welcomeando or something. So I walked into some much nicer word than foyer is what I'm saying. Yeah. So I walked into the foyer and I was wearing my elf ears. Just sort of walked in front of Julie and Zoe. Didn't say a thing. Didn't even even really give them didn't even give them a head nod or acknowledge they were there intentionally. But I walked slowly enough that I knew that she was going to see, and she saw them. And I only saw a corner of my eye. But after I walked back, we have to walk from the foyer, then we walk through this, a different part of the house, and I go back in the back of our house where our office is. And then I closed my door, and all I could hear was Zoe spazzing the hell out because she finally saw Dennis elf ears.
Did you see that? I really saw it, and I'm like, I don't know, Zoe. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
But she went.
And then when she saw you, they were gone.
Yeah, and then I put them away. She comes running into the office, and she was like, couldn't stop staring in my ears, and she just stared and stared and stared, and then I saw them. I saw them. I really did see them. What does it mean, Dada, that I saw your elf ears? What does it mean?
Just hilarious.
It just went on and on and on.
Fun.
Well, you only did that once, right?
Yeah, but we'll sneak another
because
round
she's
in.
too smart. That's why.
I know. You can't do it every day or she'll sort you out.
Well, then, after that, then we've been getting a constant barrage of her elf family with elf ears. And my elf ears now have gotten a lot bigger, because she's got a whole thing in her head of what they're supposed to look like. But it was amazing. That was fun. But one of the things we've been doing since she was born is I've got this big, no surprise here, Santa suit. And so what I'll do is I'll put on this Santa suit in the middle of the night, because you best time to wake up a kid if you want to fool them is obviously when they're asleep. So we get up. What time do we normally get up on Christmas morning?
Well, knowing that she's not going to go back to sleep once she's seen Santa, we usually are about pre-dawn.
Like 5:30, 6 o'clock.
6 a.m. right before the sun comes up.
Yeah, and then I put on the Santa suit.
Yeah.
And then I'll go, I'm rocking the Christmas bells and this whole Santa suit. We found this on Amazon. It is phenomenal. Awesome. The boots, the glasses, the whole thing. Now, she can't get too close when she's eyeballing me, but the gist of it is that, Santa's going to be putting the presents under the tree, and I'm pulling the presents out of the Santa bag. She better not be listening at our door.
Yeah, I'm monitoring.
Okay, and I'm ringing the Christmas bells. That's the reason Julie and I are talking quiet, because
I have to sneak around and film all this.
She's a very crafty little girl, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if she's trying to eavesdrop on us. So, and then Julie will go to her Zoe's bedroom, and she'll wake her up, and so Zoe comes out of her bedroom. She's this little tiny thing. How tall is Zoe? 38 inches or something?
She's about, I don't know, your navel height.
Yeah, when we take her out to...
Let's just put it this way, the bulldog weighs more.
Yeah, when we take her out to have her play with other kids and whatnot, the other parents think, oh my gosh, your daughter's so smart for a 4-year-old. And you go, nope, she's 7. Because she plays these 4 and 5-year-olds that are basically, the 5-year-old is trying to get taller than her. But anyway, so she is a house elf, basically.
She is definitely a house elf.
So we do the Santa routine, and we ring the bells, and and the ho ho ho, the whole 9 yards, and then she just will stare. And I've done this every year, and I'm not sure how many. I think she can remember back maybe 3 or 4 Christmases. She's only she's not even 7 yet, and she'll just stare as I put and then what I'll do is I'll leave little pieces of Santa hair. Oh, she's out there. I won't stop talking.
I heard a jingle bell, so
yeah.
The elf is on the loose.
Okay. Anyway.
My favorite one is when she poses as the elf on the shelf. I'll walk out somewhere, and she'll just be she'll have climbed up somehow and just be, being cute with her little legs crossed. Zoe, what are you doing? I'm the elf on the shelf. She can pull it off.
Anyway, yeah, Christmas is wonderful.
Season.
And Julie and I we were in our early 40s before Zoe came into our life. And so we had many, many Christmases with no kids. And those of you with kids, you certainly appreciate it. And those of you with no kids, I appreciate the fact that you can have holidays that are a lot more relaxing without kids. We see it from both sides.
But I think we have a lot of pent-up fun.
Yeah,
so we're
we do.
Just blasting her with it.
Yeah, we are. Maybe more. I don't know. She's outpacing us on the wanting to have fun thing by quite a rate. Sure. We can barely keep up on most days.
This is true.
Yeah. So look, this is the Christmas season. Hopefully you guys are sharing with people that you love, and you're in appreciation mode for it. If nothing else, look, you got through 2020.
Seriously.
You made it. Okay? It's
here.
over.
It's the home stretch.
You not just get a merit badge, but you get, I don't even know what. You get a certificate, a merit badge, and a plaque. How about that? And maybe even a trophy for having made it through 2020.
Yes, and I think this is, and just to remind them, a nice celebratory way to, make it to the rest of the year is tomorrow. Reminder.
Oh, yeah.
That is the Christmas star, they're calling it, where if you look, I believe it's southwest in the sky, right after the sun sets, or within that hour after sunset, you should be able to see a very, very rare occurrence. Last time it happened was, I think, the year 1225. And so I think that's a great way to start to ring out the year.
Well, so 850 years, right, is when they're suspecting it happened last. But they also, going back in history, they actually think that biblical scholars believe that it was possibly the actual star of Bethlehem was that actual, occurrence that we're all about to see.
That was the one, obviously, longer ago before this.
Right.
That was because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
And that is, they think the three kings had some astrological tendencies.
Actually,
astronomers.
I read about, you read the same thing. They're astronomers. That's actually what they were.
And they saw that in the sky, and they
followed
decided
it.
to go to Bethlehem. So
Right.
I think it's pretty awesome. We need more good news for the rest of 2020. So
It is kind of interesting. I was wondering why there's not more like Christmas. I understand why people don't say the word Christmas and Merry Christmas, though we do. So, but it's curious to me why there is less of a celebration of the holiday in the religious sense than just as basically as has it sort of become where people are just sort of celebrating downtime and, giving presents and whatnot. They've sort of lost their way. And I don't think we need to hide our fact that we believe in God and we believe in Jesus. And, we've certainly, I think we've used the Bible and the scripture as our bedrock and our backbone, not just for our marriage, but for our business and our personal life and how we conduct ourselves with everybody else. And I think that's the essence of what people are missing a lot of times, that they don't understand about religion. Like the religious, being part of a religion or being a believer in God and the Bible the Bible's a whole bunch of parables. They're stories, they're renditions of stories, but what they are is they give you a backbone, a set of rules to live your life by. And it's fascinating. Some of you guys will find that to be some kind of a political statement, but it's really not. And I'll validate it this way for those of you guys who are way on the, not believing in God side of the equation. If you think in terms of like, in essence, let me make this relevant to real estate people. I was about to talk about scientists, but I won't. Too obtuse, I think, for our listeners. So, and I'm not very good at talking about it, but I can talk about it from the real estate agent's perspective. If you look at the whole mindset movement, if you look at a lot of the mindset stuff that started way back in like the 16, 17, 1800s, all that mindset stuff was all based on Old Testament scripture. A lot of you don't realize that. I didn't realize it until Julie and I really started researching it. We'd seen little breadcrumbs. We thought, well, that sort of sounded a little bit like this that you read in this book of whomever in the Old Testament. And then when you get into it, you realize that's what a lot of the mindset stuff is. So if you're looking for the ultimate mindset motivation book, maybe look to the Bible, honestly.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's just the mindset stuff is kind of a modernization and I don't know. I mean, I think about people like Joel Osteen, who has made it so that, yes, it's religious, but it's also not so much that you can't look at it from like a mindset type of perspective.
Osteen is criticized for being incredibly successful because he combines exactly what you just said. He combines religious or essentially Christianity with mindset stuff, with self-improvement stuff.
But I think it's so much my opinion, because I like a lot of what he does, is that the reason he's been so successful is that he's made it more accessible for people.
Well, it makes so the reason someone is or isn't successful is because they're delivering something to people that the people want, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So if you're super incredibly successful, it's because you're helping a lot of other people. Maybe it's helping them in the literal sense, or maybe it's helping them in more of the spiritual sense. But when you see somebody like that's got a message like that resonates like that, then you have to assume he's doing more right than wrong. And that's really, at the end of the day,
he's being of service.
He is being of service. So look, with regards to maybe if you're feeling a little lost this time of year, if you're feeling a little sad this time of year, the holidays bring out all kinds of emotions because we go from having these regimented, disciplined, scheduled lives. And, this is an issue that any self-employed person has. And then all of a sudden you're alone with your thoughts, and sort of the emotions and thoughts and feelings that you don't necessarily deal with on a regular basis start to bubble up to the surface. And then, you're around people that you sort of strategically designed your life not to be around, certain family members, and now all of a sudden they're right there, and all those raw emotions from 20 years. Look, all this stuff is there, and, and some of you, it's going to cause you not to have an ability to wind down and enjoy the holidays and be in appreciation mode. But I'm going to give you the antidote to any sort of anxiety that you're feeling. It's just go into massive appreciation mode. And again, in Julie and I's typical drilled down fashion, do it in a very simple, practical way. Just overtly show appreciation to maybe 3 people a day. or maybe one person a day, whatever you have an appetite for. But start showing appreciation for people. And you can do it by, texting somebody. Like we have such wonderful listeners and I got probably today 3 really nice texts. I didn't read them any. I'll share them with you later. But we get these this time of year. We get a lot of these. It's a blessing.
I like the Christmas cards you're sending. That's cool.
Yeah, we're getting great Christmas cards and things like that. But that's what we're talking about. So because here's the thing, whatever you want in life, and I know this is counterintuitive, but it's really true, especially on the emotional side of life. If you give away what you want, if you give what you want, you'll get back what you gave, like 10x. So if you're not feeling appreciated, if you're not feeling loved, if you're not feeling, all those emotions that you maybe would like to have more intense in your life, you give those away and then you'll get them back. And like I said, usually you get them back at, 3, 5, 10x more than what you actually gave. And the simplest way to do it is just by writing little notes to people. And they don't have to be long soliloquies. You can just write little 2 or 3 line whatnots saying, I seriously appreciate it. I got one from Chuck Williams yesterday. He just texted me and said, Tim, just reminding you that you're the man. I was like, okay, that's a real man's way of showing appreciation. I appreciate it, Cool, and then I got these other messages where people were sending these long messages, and I appreciate those too. And we read all of them. But guys, you need to do the same thing in terms of like showing appreciation for just family members, neighbors. It doesn't matter who. Anybody that did anything for you, whether they intended to or not, that helped you in some way. There's no such thing as being self-made. Yeah, you could argue that till the cows come home, and I know that's part of the sort of the, that's part of the American ethos, right? So they pulled themselves up from rags to riches and all that. People love those stories. But the truth is none of us are truly self-made because we're all little bits and pieces of all the people that intentionally or unintentionally had a positive and sometimes negative influences on our lives. I mean, you might get more motivation and education from a bad experience than you did a good experience, but all those things go into formulating the person that you've become. So it's not hard for you to find people to show appreciation to. And if you're the one that's needing the appreciation, start by giving the appreciation and you'll get it back. Does that make sense, Julie?
Absolutely does. And it actually changes your outlook and your attitude and your thoughts and your feelings immediately.
It does.
Because if you're giving that to someone else, it's really hard for you to stay in that, grumble zone, I call it with Zoe.
Yeah, it's a psychological trick is really what it is.
It is, but that's okay. You don't have to, read a bunch of books to get there.
No.
You just have to get yourself in a place of gratitude, appreciation, and you do have control to transform how you're feeling that day.
Right. And for those of you who are also maybe feeling a little bit, you're not feeling, in appreciation mode and you're not really enjoying the holidays yet. The other thing, again, aside from showing overt appreciation, would definitely be to purge all forms of media. Stop watching the news. Just maybe you can pull in some podcasts. That's pretty much, when was the last time you and I even? Never. I mean, when we were in a hotel in Miami earlier this month, you and I may have watched some news channel. But other than that, it's such crap.
I don't even know I don't even know what the channels are anymore.
Well, because we cut the cable a long time ago.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I love podcasts because you can choose what you're stuffing into your head. And you can try some things out. Maybe you have some curiosity about something, so you try 3 or 4 different podcasts till something resonates with you. Versus like passively turning on the TV or whatever, or even the radio. So
the interesting thing about podcasts too is a lot of people, if you just broadcast during a podcast, you're going to get your listeners are going to have a certain type of experience, which is more impersonal and probably a little bit formulaic, a little bit fake. Whereas if you have a longer form podcast, and I've discovered this on some of the long interviews I've done. So we did, I don't know, maybe 3 interviews this year that lasted 2 hours.
And another one coming up this week, I think.
Well, hopefully, if Gene agrees.
We'll
we're one of our great friends, Gene Frederick, lives here in Puerto Rico. And he's if you want to talk about an American success story, oh my gosh. I'm so hoping he agrees to do the podcast.
We'll send Elf Zoe in to ask.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. He can't say no to her. Nope. But yeah, when I do these interviews, like what was the most recent long one I did? I did one with Mike Reese. I did one with who else? There's some. Brent Gove.
Yes,
and
those are great.
But it's fascinating for me to watch. Some people don't have much of an agenda. Like I thought. I actually thought Brent and Mike both were very sincere. They didn't screw around with trying to basically, fart out their particular talking points that they're familiar with.
Right.
I think I could be accused of doing that. Like, I'm always on my talking points when being interviewed, right?
No, but I think everybody is for a while, and then you kind of get going and you talk about other stuff.
But that's my point. If you go longer than maybe most people are conditioned to talk, which is most 15 or 20 minutes, and after that they really run out of content,
right.
And then you start talking about real things, that's when the interview gets really interesting.
I agree. I like those the best too.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about podcasts, maybe it's like if you're hearing Julie and I say, don't watch the news, and all the podcasts you're listening to are the, essentially the talking heads from CNN or Fox, you're not really hearing the message here. What we're suggesting you do is step away from the agenda-driven media and start looking for things that are going to enrich your mind, enrich your soul, and also maybe some things that will cause you to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because remember, guys, whatever you're resisting is where your growth needs to be. And this is a great time of year to sort of just rehash and hit the hard reset button and load some new software and all the other analogies that I could throw at you so you can conceptually understand that this is the time of year is a blessing. And the fact that we've been through this year together and we've all made it. You're listening, so you did make it. Yes. You might have some bumps and some bruises to show for it. You might have a few scars and sniffles, but the reality of it is you made it. Congratulations. Right. Well, technically you have to live another 2 weeks, but we'll get there. And so celebrate that. Start out by showing appreciation. Start out by, there it is. That's our suggestion.
And some self-appreciation too. I mean,
definitely.
Literally, you made it this far through 2020, through what has to be one of the most bizarre years ever. And it's okay to say thank you, past, fill in your name, for, having it together. And many of you guys, especially our real estate listeners, actually had your best year ever during a pandemic.
I know.
So thank you, past you, for, figuring it out how to do Zoom calls and how to, change your technology and to deal with and to be flexible.
Have you thought about why so many agents had such good years? Why? The obvious answers are housing, people wanting to reinvest. I think people got into fear mode. I think back in February, everybody was fearful because no one knew what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And, Julie and I consult with brokers and just all kinds of different business owners. And a lot of them are our friends more than they are our former clients. And none of them knew what the hell to do. No. I mean, where we live in Puerto Rico, we're elbow to elbow with people that own small businesses. And, and some of them are in just all kinds of different industries. And none of them knew what to do. Nope. They all say we're going to sit tight. This is before the government was going to ride in on its white horse and just basically sprinkle cash everywhere. So this is before the PPP and all these other programs that came out that really did provide a lifeline for our country in every meaningful way until the economy started coming roaring back. But I think what happened was a lot of agents for the first time in a long time were scared out of complacency. That's what I think it was.
About right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what's more. Here's the other prevailing thought I had, and you can tell I've been thinking about it for the sake of our
predictions
right?
Podcast. Yeah.
Which we're going to hopefully do next week, if I'm feeling motivated. Otherwise, we're going to do it after the new year.
Yeah. We'll figure it out then.
But what I was thinking was that you remember frugality fatigue?
Yeah.
Explain that to our listeners.
During the the housing crash recession of whatever it is now, 13 years ago, 14 years.
14. Isn't that amazing?
I know. Which, to me, and we were coaching during
Doesn't it feel like 2 days ago?
It feels like 2.5 days ago.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I still have, emotional.
Well, so when so many people lost equity in their houses and then many of them lost their houses, you go into this frugality. I'm not going to spend. I'm going to, what was it? Voluntary simplicity. I'm going to run all of my bills down. I'm going to go really cheap on everything. Well, and that's fine. And a lot of people kind of purge some extra stuff maybe they were carrying either voluntarily or forced because they lost their job, they lost their house, their equity, everything. Unemployment was pretty high then. So you go into frugality. But the thing is that that's not really sustainable. Eventually, you realize that, you kind of like having stuff around you and you kind of like the amazing thing. Forget what the statistic was, but once you've owned a home, you're not going to rent forever. You're going to go back and buy a house again. You get exhausted on your own frugality.
But that's exactly what it was. And that's the same thing. Now, so you and I have talked about this, but this is what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. This is like an easy prediction.
I think so.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. There's going to be, now everyone's debating the vaccine. People are now getting the vaccine treatment. Did you pull up an article for us to talk about the actual vaccine?
Yes.
Because our doctor texted us and I want to share with our listeners all that because we need to move people away from the political bullshit.
It's actually really fascinating.
About the vaccine. But before that,
Yeah.
so when essentially the world has rounded the bend, there doesn't even have to be like a cure. But no more COVID-19.
No.
It just essentially has to be a vast majority of the population or either had the antibodies from having had it. There's herd immunity, and so basically herd immunity, antibodies, same thing. So in other words, you had it or and you can't get it again. You can't pass it along to other people.
You've developed resistance, basically.
Right. And or the vaccine. Okay, so when you basically have those two things that a vast majority of the population have, then you're going to see what we do believe is going to be an absolute renaissance. And we talked about this on our Sunday podcast for a number of shows in a row. Mm-hmm. But that renaissance, what does that actually mean?
Well, so it's a reinvestment, a reinsurgence of things across multiple disciplines. So you have technology like the Apple Glass that you've talked about.
Yep.
You have medicine. I mean, historic speed to get a vaccine. The previously fastest vaccine took 4 years.
Yep.
Okay. And before that, it was even a lot longer than that. Science, health, medicine, nutrition, technology, everything.
I read the same article, and in defense, the last time it was in the 50s that they were able to deliver a vaccine in
They didn't have the technology.
and basically right, we didn't have the technology.
Sure.
So, but what you're saying, and it's incredibly important, is that now people have an expectation that we have the technology now to take care of health problems faster.
Yes.
And maybe some of the preconceived notions. It's the 4-minute mile thing, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a thing. I remember very clearly back in February where people were saying, all kinds of different education levels and authority levels, they're all saying, well, it's going to take 5 years, so we're going to be living in this dark ages for 5 years. A lot of people were saying that.
Yeah.
That was like an omnipresent headline.
Yeah, we were headed for,
the greatest depression ever and all this other stuff.
Well, that, to your point earlier, that was how everybody's feeling in February and March. Okay,
right.
Now it's hit the fan. We're all screwed.
Right. And that got agents off their butts and had them go out and start doing.
I think it got a lot of people off their butts.
It did.
I mean, I'll tell you, looking around here, in Puerto Rico, where we have certain things that are less convenient, the amount of small businesses that have cropped up, whether that's, somebody delivering something for you or some other kind of service, or, there's people in the neighborhood who have like a whole baked goods factory going.
But Puerto Ricans are very entrepreneurial.
Absolutely.
I have to, having lived here now for over a year, I've never been around.
Proactive.
Talk about don't judge a book by its cover. This entire island is don't judge a book by its cover.
That's for sure.
People here in the news, especially, you hear Puerto Rico high poverty rates and Puerto Rico this, and everyone's living in a mudslide surrounded by an earthquake and a tsunami. Yeah. Look, guys, it's such a bunch of horseshit. It's such a bunch of politically motivated BS. It's just not true. Puerto Ricans, for the most part, have you had one bad experience other than maybe a DMV experience? Not even there.
Not really.
They're
not,
brilliant.
Not bad experiences. No, a little inconvenience now and then, but you can get that anywhere.
Yeah, and you can trust them. We had one person that took advantage of us for $600 on a home repair. But other than that, people are
generally very giving and very personable. And very forgiving language-wise too.
Right, personality-wise, they actually remind me. They remind me of Texans.
Yeah, and I think generally happy. Very jovial. There's a party for everything.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The holidays last like a month and a half.
Oh, that's right. It starts at basically now. We're about 2 weeks ago.
Literally, I read stuff about this. It really starts the day after Halloween.
Yeah.
And that's when you start kind of your Christmas type stuff.
This is the official thing in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and then you have some holidays leading up into Christmas. Then you have Three Kings Day, and there's like 2 other feasts between Christmas and Three Kings Day, and then there's another celebration at the end of January.
These people are OG getting their party on. Is what I'm saying.
I think she doesn't go back to school till mid-January.
We're talking about Zoe, obviously.
But it'll be about a month.
Well, the more you pay, the less you stay. Isn't that the rule?
This is true.
Well, so what we anticipate is going to happen, and I want all of you to at least consider this, is that the emotions that will be felt and experienced by humanity, not just Americans and people in your town. And you can be in a small town like where Julie and I bought our cabin this year in Murphy, North Carolina, which we adore. Those of you, it's so funny. We've picked up all these new podcast listeners in that part of the world. We're very jealous of where all of you live. It's one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth that Julie and I have ever been. It's awesome. Gorgeous. The mountains of the Smoky Mountains in Appalachia are amazing. So in any event, yes, you're going to see a resurgence of a lot of things that for example, the fact that the vaccine was created in a year. And take, for example, the fact that a lot of people have been living in real fear, especially if they watch CNN, frankly, for over a year. What's going to happen on the other side of that when that pendulum swings back? When people are feeling safe to go out again, when they're feeling joyous and, of life, and they're realizing you only live once and you're dead a real long time. I mean, you can draw a lot of, I think, summaries that there's going to be an explosion in the economy, and there's going to be an explosion in just all kinds of positive things. I don't think you're going to be able to make too good of an argument for anything bad happening once there's a vaccine, and once people basically are allowed to celebrate life and being together. And so there's going to be
the travel industry will do.
Oh yeah,
Pent up demand like crazy.
Well, my mind goes to actually. It's not just people spending money. I mean, that's the easy button, right? Mm-hmm. But it also goes to how are they going to choose to live? That's what I find to be particularly fascinating. And because what COVID did, what this year has proven, is that people really don't like living in cities. Nope. And people would choose to live in the parts of the country where we were told were essentially flyover states.
I know, it's very fascinating.
We were told that if you wanted to be prosperous in America, you had to live in one of these megatropolises, or Miami, New York, and da-da-da-da. Well, maybe there's a higher probability that you can definitely get a better paying job if you're in, but then the taxes and the cost of living are going to sort of negate the added income you would have made. Oh, and guess what? Now that company that you moved to Manhattan to get a job at will let you live in
wherever you want.
Murphy, North Carolina, as long as you can get online and do Zooms. And so what people are doing in mass is they're migrating out. And did you see an article I sent to you about the mass migration trends out of the major cities?
Yeah.
I don't think there was a single major city that showed Raleigh, North Carolina, or Raleigh, Durham. Okay, that was the only one. All the others had people moving out. Now, New York, in all fairness, the trend was people moving out of New York prior to COVID. But now you're seeing it in all these major metropolitan areas, like people moving out of LA and people moving out of all these other densely populated areas. It's not because it's because of the lifestyle. It's because I think a lot of people are the political side of it is the politics and the taxes, and that's definitely part of it. But I think the real reason is because people want to live a different type of life.
It's quality of life,
right?
That people all of a sudden had to come to terms with. I remember reading an article, one of my magazines, and the editor said that she'd seen more of her home office in 3 months than she had in 12 years of owning the house. And that now she realizes all these things that she'd like to have in her office that she didn't, and that was going to cause her to move.
Well, think about why we moved to Puerto Rico, right? I mean, there's definitely business and tax advantages, but we don't want to talk about that.
I was also dying of allergies, but
okay. Well, so I mean, our list of reasons, but our reason of the number one reason that we chose to move here, well, I'll have to say probably number one was your health, because when we were in Texas, Julie was. I mean, how many different inhalers were you on? You were a mess.
3 inhalers every day on a normal day, and I was on allergy shots 3 or 4 times a week. And then when Zoe would get a cold, I would get it like 10 times as bad.
Because your immune system was so busy trying to fight off the allergens. And what did they tell you when you had your lung thing done?
They said you need to move.
No, what did they tell you? They said you had 50%
lung capacity.
50% lung capacity.
Right around like 53%,
Yeah, so
which is like an emphysemic person probably.
Right, because the allergies were so bad. And then they basically would celebrate when it would get up to like 60% lung capacity.
Yeah.
So
that's what you do when you go to get your allergy shots. You have to breathe into an inhaler every time so they track you.
Yeah.
And because they're putting an allergen in you, if it's too low, if your capacity already is diminished, then they're not going to.
Oh, they're checking it. So how high? Yeah. What was the highest lung capacity you got up to when you were there?
60-something probably.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, and I was working out, trying to be on the treadmill, so it was just a quality of life. It's not anything against Texas. I love. We've got great friends in Texas, and I loved our house there, and lots of really beautiful things.
Our cows and our chickens.
Yeah,
we had cows and chickens.
We tried being farmers for a while.
We tried to be Texas people, but here's the point, though, is that you went to your
the allergist, and she said, you need to move. And I said, what would you suggest? She said, first, you have to realize that our actual zip code was second only to a county in Atlanta for literally the worst pollen in the country.
Right.
And she said, if you can move to an island where there's breezes and there's not like our kind of tree pollen that we had in Texas, that's going to be your best bet.
So Julie was basically allergic to every single thing in Texas, and I was allergic to some what was that nasty tree that's everywhere in Texas? What are those things called?
That was elm and the
juniper, weren't they? Cedar. Oh yeah.
Cedar fever, which I thought was made up baloney until
that's stuff.
To feel it. It gives you headaches.
Yeah, you guys in Texas, you know what I'm talking about. And everyone walks around basically with, the pharmacy is sold out of any kind of decongestion. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Lifestyle is the point. When you can make those decisions.
Well, the number one reason we moved here was your health. And the number two was lifestyle. And number three was business reasons.
Yeah.
But I remember, so like Julie and I have been married for 30 years this year,
I know.
which is amazing. We got married when we were 20 and 21. And, that was unusual when we got married, and it's unusual now, more so now. But in that time, we always had this fantasy that one day, this goal really, that one day when we basically got to the point where, our definition of rich is where your money works for you, you no longer work for your money, that we would live someplace that would be no fear of winter, no snow, really. That was
no shoveling, no snow tires.
No, and the average daily temperature would be, above the rules that we set for ourselves. And this was probably, 15 years ago, was 70 degrees, And so we had other particular, and we tried different parts of the country, but Julie's allergies and other things until this last go around with her health issues in Texas and the doctor saying what she did. Well, then we go, okay, well, where the hell can we live that's in the United States where we can have the benefits of the United States and at the same time be on an island? There is only one answer. It's either, there's two answers. It's either Hawaii or it's Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And we did check out Hawaii.
We did.
Yeah.
We had a great event there while we were there.
We did. We did check out Hawaii, and it wasn't for us for a variety of reasons. No, nothing against Hawaii. We love it. Though I can't, frankly, quite forgive Hawaii for tearing down Thomas Magnum's mansion.
There's that. Which 3 people will understand. But
on Oahu. Okay. Yeah. Which really, can't believe they tore that down. But anyway, yeah. So we won't talk about that. No. But yes,
we tried.
Puerto Rico is the only answer. And moving here was one of the best things we've ever done. And I have to say, it's one of for psychologically, having come where we came from, which was less than nothing, and in getting to where we are now, and being able to sort of visualize these goals and these dreams. Some of our dreams and our goals were very easily understood, solid, do this, do the other thing. But others of them were just sort of shared fantasies. And this was one of the biggest shared fantasies we actually made happen. So that's a pretty incredible thing.
I know. It's pretty awesome.
And
we have a lot to be grateful for.
We do have a lot to be grateful for. And I hope all of you guys feel the same thing in the same way. Because really, guys, this is, rounding the bend, this to my point that I was trying to make earlier, is you really do only live once and you're dead a real long time. And it's easy for you to get lost, all of us, to get lost in our thoughts and our lack of action, and just kind of, we get stuck in these emotional and then financial quagmires that make it so that we live these diminished versions of ourselves. And it's all voluntary. That's the thing. And there's nobody outside of you that's keeping you from doing the things you want to do in life. It's all basically within your control. Trust me when I tell you, Julie and I had no particular talents, no particular, anything. We had no anything that anyone would have said when we were kids that these guys are going to get somewhere in life, other than, Julie was, predetermined to be a school teacher of some variety, and I don't even know what I was predetermined to be, right? But the reality of it is that when we were kids, we decided to set our goals and our aspirations higher. And maybe that in itself is what made us unique. But I don't think so, because I think everyone starts out in life wanting certain things, hoping they accomplish certain things, and then as time passes, they sort of get, institutionalized into a way of thinking and acting and living that they don't even remember what their dreams were. They don't even remember what their goals were.
Yeah.
And sometimes that in itself is the remembering of those things is what makes you depressed this time of year, because you're benchmarking where you are to where maybe you'd originally hoped you'd be. Well, I'm here to tell you, no matter how old you are, no matter what bumps and bruises you have, you can do tremendous things with your life because of all the wins that are going to soon be at our back, and the economy and just all these other great things. Like I said, we're working on this predictions article or podcast, and it's going to be something of a revelation when I finish it, in that I've been looking for any sort of news or any sort of reason to be doubtful or be pessimistic, because we have to balance what we're saying, because we don't just want to seem Pollyannic, and I can't find any. Look, if you're in a different industry, then no problem. Maybe if you're in housing, or maybe you're, I don't know, I'm sorry, in the restaurant business, or if you're in some other kind of business that's going to be a long time coming before it actually makes a recovery, then maybe that's not the best future you have for the next 5 years. But real estate,
even then you have control of making some decisions and changing what you're doing.
Like getting a real estate license.
For example.
Yeah, that's a question we get in one form or another from young people especially. Mm-hmm. And we always tell them, and if you got, listeners who have kids that are adults, tell them to get real estate licenses.
I'll tell you what, of our one-on-one, our elite coaching clients that have kids in their 20s and early 30s, if I go down our list, all of their kids are getting licensed or already have gotten licensed. Some of them because they want to join their parents in the career. Some of them because they want it as a backup and they see that, maybe what they were pursuing is maybe not going to be as lucrative as they wanted it to be. Lots of different reasons. A couple of them just because their friends are starting to buy houses and they want to make some referral fees. So you have options is the point. Make some decisions.
Let's go back and let's talk about why everyone should get the COVID vaccine. Because you and I were joking on the podcast that we're going to take it. We're just not going to be the first one online.
Right. This
is
true.
Why don't you read them with the doctors? Didn't he send that to you in a text?
If you don't mind me.
Is the article the same information? It's just longer winded though, right?
That's the first one here.
Okay.
So I think this is really interesting because it's a little bit different than how we grew up to think vaccines were.
You know what? Why don't you go? You know where your phone is? Yeah, go get your phone. Because I'm looking at this article and I'm like tripping over every seventh word.
Well, I think it's an FDA article as
well. CDC, exactly. And our doctor sent us a really succinct, easy to understand, definite, or reason why we should get the COVID vaccine when it's available. And it's available, going to be available through, I think it's 5 or 6 different sources. So it's not going to take till the end of next summer for people to get the vaccine. You're going to have access to it quicker than you otherwise would have. In certain countries, like we had lunch yesterday with a friend of ours here, and he travels to Asia quite frequently. And he said most Asian countries aren't going to let you go to their country. Did the house elf want to be on the elf got you. You got attacked by the elf. But he's not going to be allowed into the countries unless he has the vaccine. So for a weird amount of time, there's going to be a bifurcation, those with vaccine and those without. But so, Julie,
yes.
This is a text from, you can share his name.
Dr. Javier Torres Marin here in Puerto Rico.
And Dorado. So if you are in Dorado, as we're picking up more and more listeners in Puerto Rico, he is a fantastic doctor, and he
takes great care of us.
And he's a mobile doctor. He comes to us.
He's a mobile concierge doctor. He has taken care of Zoe with many bouts of strep throat, and also has administered. I think we've been COVID tested like 5 times.
Well, every time we come back.
Okay, so we trust him is the point, and that's why I ask him stuff like this. Okay, and I actually have read this 2 or 3 times trying to understand it. Before I read this, there's a difference in this vaccine. You notice it's called an mRNA vaccine. That's different, and when I read this, you'll see why. Okay, so I asked him. When you have a second, what's your opinion on the vaccine? Take or wait? Timing for normal people? Are you getting one? Figure if he's getting one, it's kind of an endorsement. He says, totally for it. An mRNA vaccine doesn't actually contain the virus. How many people believe that you're shooting yourself with
the flu shot does.
Right. It's not an mRNA vaccine.
So when you have the flu, but are there different varieties of vaccine for COVID?
Let me do the mRNA deal. It's a different type of vaccine is the point. And it's actually, when I read this and when I maybe read some of that article, it's like crazy science how this thing works, okay? He says an mRNA vaccine doesn't actually contain the virus. It's like your body's immune system receives a message via the mRNA vaccine, like in the Missing in Action movies, that shows the super secret genetic material of what the virus looks like. And here's the crazy thing, okay? And when I read this, I actually researched what he said because it just sounded so bonkers to me. Okay, so super secret genetic material of what the virus looks like and the instructions on how to make the special protein that looks exactly like the virus's proteins. These mRNA messages will actually self-destroy in 10 days.
That's what's crazy.
Okay, your body will then make an army of antibodies that will be ready to destroy the proteins carried on the surface of the COVID-19 virus if the virus ever even tries to attack your immune system.
So the bottom line is that your body is tricked into thinking that it has COVID.
Well, not even that. It's told the instructions to create. But basically, it artificially creates antibodies.
So I get it.
Okay, because if you have the virus, then you get antibodies because you fought it.
Right.
So this.
But you have to fight it first.
Yeah, but so this simulates that and trips your immune system into basically having an army being ready if the virus tries to get you.
That's awesome.
And the thing that the vaccine has is instructions on how to make that on your own. versus waiting till you get it and making those antibodies. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
But it's not the actual virus being shot into you.
So when did when Marin say that the vaccine would be available to normal folk like us?
He didn't answer me on that yet. But he said his nurse already did it, and he's getting it in the next week or so.
Okay. Well, here's what you should do. He's getting in the next week or so. You got to hold the mic close to your head. So when he, here's what I want you to do. Let's say he gets it next Wednesday.
Yeah.
I want you to wait approximately a week to 10 days, and then
see how he's feeling.
And then ask, well, so
I know. How's it going?
Human guinea pig.
I know. Well, that is part of my plan. But so it, and so now, of course, people are trying to make it political, right? So who should get it first, and how are they going to figure that out? There is an interesting thing that's being floated around, though, since there's X number of vaccines made, and then you have to get 2 weeks later, you get the rest of the vaccine or a secondary vaccine. So there's, they're looking at the numbers that they have and who should get it first as it gets manufactured. So people have said, well, why aren't we testing to see if you already have the antibodies so that you don't even need a vaccine and somebody else can have it? That makes sense to me. The rest of it is becoming a little bit more politicized, but I think as they make more and more vaccines, that'll dry up. That, we'll get a little less crazy. But I thought it was interesting because I thought for months, why would I risk putting the vaccine into me? Or putting the virus into me, but that's not what you're doing.
Right. Well, again,
so
politicized ignoramuses and the rest of it.
Well, sure. And people are posting all over social media, oh, I would never do that. Why would I risk this and that? And the other thing that the CDC said is that people falsely believe that will get into your DNA and mess with your DNA and change what you've already got in you. And it absolutely doesn't come anywhere near your DNA.
You and I had that conversation earlier this year. It is kind of funny how, people don't realize that we're all genetically modified, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about my allergies, right? So I was trying to boost my allergy immunity by putting something that I was clearly allergic to into my body, and it was starting to work. But, what did I see? Somebody said, so you're worried about what's making up the vaccine and you've been eating ho-hos and hot dogs your whole life?
Yeah.
If you're willing to eat that, then why are you so wound up about this?
Right.
Because it's political.
It's political. That's why. Exactly. It's political, and I think, I mean, I don't even want to talk about it.
Well, and people are ignorant of that if you haven't studied it. That's why I go to places like the CDC to look up what the skinny actually is and why I ask an actual doctor instead of, speculation.
Or somebody who plays a doctor
exactly,
on TV.
Even worse. So in our collection of things to
Are we moving to your weird
about.
stories? I like this one. Okay, there's two stories you picked out, which are hilarious. All right.
We don't have to do all of them. These were
actually, I have a question. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And because we were just talking about something that I know is going to get some people, thinking just the emotional reactions from talking about the vaccine and for some people, a bizarre, politicized, nonsensical emotional reaction that has nothing to do with logic, right?
Right.
And I was thinking as you were talking, I can just hear the fingers on the keyboards. I love Tim and Julie. They were great to listen to until Julie started talking about the vaccine.
Right.
She must be a forever Trumper.
Right.
Or whatever. It is funny how some people just dig their heels in it. But as you were talking, I was thinking, the reaction that we'll inevitably get from some people, fringe folks, from talking about what you just said, which I can't imagine anyone would react negatively, but I already know they will, is similar to the manner of how some people react when we talk about EXP Realty.
I know. They just get this reaction.
Right.
They've been hit by a stun gun of something they must react to.
So look, I want to talk about this because I can't sort this out in my head. Yeah. And I think I can't sort it out in my head because, I honestly, I don't understand it. Why is a choice of a real estate brokerage for so many people, they're like zealots. It's almost like for some people, not for a lot, but for the vocal minority, the idea of us talking about a brokerage is similar to us saying bad things about their religion. Right?
Right.
So it's almost like some of the belief structures that would have been maybe, focused towards religion, 50 years ago, 20 years ago.
Somehow.
Right. Somehow. So when we start suggesting to you guys that you start looking at EXP Realty for just every possible benefit you can imagine, some of you guys get so mad at us. And I don't understand why. Help me understand why.
I'll tell you exactly why. Because they don't know what they're mad about.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're mad about. They don't know what the model is. They haven't done any research. They don't stop. Then this is something that bothers me in general about how society is right now, is that instead of asking, oh, this is interesting, why would Tim and Julie want to talk about EXP? Why? I mean, they're licensed, right? Why would they put their license there? Instead of asking the question, they assume that there's like some other agenda there, or that, we're just attacking your decision to be with whatever broker.
But level off.
Yeah.
I want to drill down even more, because I really want to understand this, and I really don't understand this.
Right.
Why would people be offended that we're talking about EXP Realty? Not the why. Maybe the better question is the who. Who are the types of people that are offended when we talk about EXP Realty? And the only answer I come up with, and you tell me whether you think I'm wrong. You don't have to agree with me just because
that's all right.
It's Christmas and you're trying to be nice, okay? Don't. If you disagree, say you disagree, please.
Yeah, sure.
I think the people that are offended by EXP Realty are the ones that perceive that if people hear the message about EXP Realty, they're going to lose. So I think the people that are maybe basically criticize us for talking about EXP Realty are the ones who perceive that if people listen to what we're saying, because they know we have gazillions of people that listen to us, that our influence is going to cause them some kind of financial discomfort. I think at the core root of it, there's their fear of loss. That's what I have to think. And I was watching a video with Brent Gove, and it was really actually interesting. Brent was talking in front of his team of 50 people or whatever, and he was talking about like he was with Coldwell Banker, and then I think he was with
Remax for a
Remax. I don't remember. Anyway, he's talking about
and KW too. I think. I don't know. He's been with several brokers.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's been like a successful, one of the West Coast, certainly Sacramento area top agent. I did this interview with him on the podcast. You guys should go and listen to it. But it was so funny when he was talking, and I know he knows he was being fooled, but I love the way he said it. He said, I, for my brokerage prior to EXP, was a cow. That's what he said. He said he was a cow. And every day they would say, good cow, I'm going to take another couple gallons of milk from you. Good cow, here's some more hay. Good cow. Right? So the cow was just there to basically be milked. And I thought that was actually kind of a funny way of thinking about it. And so when you and I talk on our podcast, and we talk in our book about agents becoming wise to the way that the industry it is essentially designed to manipulate agents not to think about their own financial best interests for the sake of the brokerages and the industry itself. Yeah. That's, I think, what pisses people off.
Yeah, I think it's because...
Not a minority people, small handful of people.
I mean,
but
the
they're
ones
vocal.
that actually understand it don't get pissed.
No, but
yeah, I think you're right, and it's because there's been so long of believing in one specific model that it's the only model, and that's just how it's done. And you have these three things to make a decision about a brokerage, and that's it. You decide.
Right.
Versus understanding that there is a new way of going about business that is much, much, much like staggeringly more agent specific. That really is, and I know that sounds trite. Oh, the brokerage is all about the agents. Well, what does that even mean?
Well, let's talk about that. And I don't want to get pitchy about EXP.
No.
I'm trying to understand the psychology, truthfully. So the thing that fascinates me is that what you just said is so true. Every time that you ever heard the words agent-centric, and we've even used those words before. But when you hear brokerages say agent-centric, you got to ask yourself, well, what does that mean exactly? What does agent-centric mean? And so the definition of agent-centric for the longest time may have been, we're going to support you, whatever that means. We're going to have office parties. We're going to have barbecues. We're going to give you awards and plaques. In other words, as Brent said, you're going to continue to be the cow, and we're going to give you hay when you're hungry. Yeah. That's in essence but what EXP did, and the genius of what Glenn thought of, was making it so, I can't believe how simple and magical of a sort of an original founder story that Glenn's story is. When he talked about the fact that, and this is on YouTube someplace, he was on a stage, he said, I realize that most realtors will never save money, never be able to retire. And he said, if I could create a system that basically made realtors financially well off, if not in many cases very wealthy, despite themselves, then I've created something magical.
That's the core of it, isn't it?
That is the core of it. And so what he did, guys, you make, obviously the commission split conversation, frankly, that's on the side. For most of you, the EXP commission split is going to be beneficial to whatever you're paying now. But don't stop there, because that's not even
the only question, and it shouldn't even be your leading question.
It shouldn't. That's not even the most important question. No. Because for the most part, most brokerages are going to be at some iteration of 80-20, 70-30. I mean, you have some ones that are, old school brokerages that are less than that. Commercial brokerages, you guys listeners, did you know there's an EXP commercial where your cap is, I think it's $18,000 a year or $20,000 a year, and after that you're 100%. So you're paying your 20 grand commercial agents, commercial brokers, and after that you're 100%. Are you listening?
As in no split.
As in no split. I know that's completely bizarre for the commercial industry, but there it is, and there's a lot of commercial people that are waking up to that. Well, so the commission split thing, let's just assume that for the most part, EXP is at least competitive with your best commission opportunities, but for the most part, probably is going to save, or is going to put a lot more money in your pocket every year. And let's not even talk about technology. So, let's just move those things aside. The thing that most people, I think, you have to have a certain level of business maturity to really appreciate the true advantages of EXP. You can tell stories and whatnot, but this is what this past 2 years involvement since, you moved your license to EXP, and seeing how, like when we were started with EXP in January of 2019, the stock, I don't even remember what it was trading for, $5 or $6 a share.
It was so low you didn't really even pay that much.
You didn't even talk about it, people, and now it's trading in the 70s 2 years later. And I was trying to add up, and I don't want to really say a number because people will think I'm exaggerating, but I know dozens of people who have become at least single-digit millionaires because they've gotten EXP stock over the last just 3, 4, 5 years. We know some people who have become very rich off EXP stock, but here's the thing: you get EXP stock awards in essence. I'm not sure if that's the legal term, but just for doing transactions, just for doing what you're already doing. EXP shares you become an owner in the company just by doing transactions.
Quite literally. And you're talking about when you say awarded shares, this means you did not write a check. You did not transfer money for those shares. It didn't come out of your pocket.
And this is the conversation.
This is where most people have no idea what we're even talking about right
now.
I
know.
So I think that's part of the problem.
Because EXP is publicly traded, the ticker symbol is EXPI. Drop that into Google and read all these business stock analysis guys ranting and raving how everyone should be buying EXP. I mean, that's in essence what's going on right now. But what this company has quickly becoming, and this is the thing, the only thing I can sort of emotionally attach this to is the success we've had in our own coaching business. And frankly, when we sold real estate, you and I went from 0 to selling 100 houses in basically 1 year. So we've experienced things that would have been perceived as being monumental before in terms of levels of success, but nothing like this.
Nothing like this.
Nothing. I've never been around a group of people in a brokerage and a business that were not just growing really quick, but the people are, I don't even know how to describe it. Like Dave Kennard, the president of the company. When I talk to Dave Kennard, he is so locked in, engaged, so focused on helping, and then we talked to, I talked to Glenn Sanford, I talked to Gene Frederick, I talked to all these other people. It's not like you're talking to these people who frankly are becoming very wealthy from the stock. You're talking to normal people, and we're all on a mission together. So that startup fever, or
they're exuberant about the company.
They're exuberant about helping other people become successful in the company.
And as agents discover what that's like,
it's a true partnership.
They really, everybody is like that. I've never experienced that in any other brokerage or anything where everyone was working together on something. It's hard to even explain it.
I couldn't even understand it until you and I originally went to that event in 2018.
I agree.
2018 in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I never experienced anything like that. You walk into this room and we
were both skeptical up to that point.
Totally. We weren't sold on EXP at all.
Right?
Well, this was back when everyone was saying, what's EXP? Now nobody says that anymore. Yeah. But so we walked into this room and we were just elbow to elbow. How many people were there? 100? Wasn't that big?
No, maybe 100, 150.
Yeah, and all of them it was a different vibe. It wasn't the, competitive. There was competition, of course, but it wasn't the sort of me versus you. And, everyone was very collaborative, because they were all owners in the company. Because they're all pulling towards the same goal. Yeah. Because for the first time in their lives, maybe they're, a lot of them didn't even ever see themselves as being shareholders and being equity holders in a company that
it literally is life changing.
It is life changing, but it's changing their lives, and this was Glenn's mission, which I love. It changes their lives for the better, despite their mental or emotional acumen that would have gotten there on their own, right?
Right.
So they could have had sloppy finances. They could have had, everything. But if they just participate in EXP, all ships are rising with the share value, and there's so many people that are for the first time in their lives listening right now. A lot of you guys are EXP agents who are going to have financial security that you, frankly, and I know this from coaching agents forever, would never have been able to accomplish in your life.
In spite of your best intentions and efforts,
Right.
I mean, the cool thing about the stock award system is that to your earlier point, it doesn't rely on an agent saying, you know what, I'm going to be super disciplined and I'm going to invest this much every month. It is done for you.
But you can do that.
You can.
And you can buy the share
at a discount.
Right. You can buy the shares at a discount through when you do a transaction. But look, that's just one thing.
But my point in saying that is that it's almost like the company kind of has your back on your investing.
Truly.
In a way, and no other company does that.
Well, when people ask us, like, we get the question all the time, what do we do? And we always tell them what we are, basically, depending who's asking. We'll say, sure, we're real estate business coaches or whatever. But really what Julie and I become are asset managers of our different assets. But it's fun occasionally. I'll say, well, we're partial owners of EXP Realty, because we are. And you can be too. And that's exciting. We're partners in the company, just like all of you guys can be. But here's the real story that I love to share. And this is something, again, I could only tell other people's stories 2 years ago, but now I can relate our own experiences with a lot of the people that we've helped join EXP. Your life will change. Like on our, Julie and I do a weekly call, or I do a weekly call for our revenue share group called Libertas. And on the Thursday call of last week, I explained to them the concept of revenue share, but I didn't use numbers. I used essentially an analogy. And here it is. In your mind, listeners, I want you to, now some of you right now are saying, damn it, they're talking about EXP Realty. Well, the message isn't for you. God bless you. Merry Christmas. Bye-bye. But for the rest of you, draw it, and you can do this in your head. Draw a ladder. And ladder has lots of rungs. And this ladder, by the way, it goes up into the sky, and you can't see where it actually goes. So don't think 6 foot or 8 foot or whatever. Think this ladder that has no limits to the height that it has. And I want you to, in your mind, start labeling each of those rungs on the ladder a financial burden that you'd love to have removed from your life. And on this coaching session we did, this mastermind for our group, I suggested, and I had all of them write down what their absolute core living expenses are, very similar to the real estate treasure map. So they would write down their house payment, their car payment, their food, their water, their electric, their health insurance, that type of thing. Write all these things down. And each of those numbers represented a rung on the ladder. And, and the way you decide which rung comes first is whichever one you'd feel the best about not having to worry about anymore. So for most people, it was their house payment. And so I asked, just random people on this Zoom, I said, well, what's your house payment? You heard everywhere from, $12,000 a month. And, if you're in LA or whatever, that's normal. Or, some people were like $1,500 a month, $2,500. Okay. So that's your first goal. And then, I asked them all this question. So what would it feel like, Bob, not to have to worry about the house payment anymore? What if the house payment was completely taken care of by revenue share every single month, so you never had to actually think about the house payment again? So $2,500 a month comes in automatically, just almost like magic,
But also for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life.
Not just this month.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, basically.
Right. And then what if that number then, with you doing a simple, maybe spending an hour or 2 or 3 a week, that number then could grow to the point where it actually helped you climb the first 10 rungs. So all your personal expenses were covered. Then we went through, I went through personal expenses, and then we talked about the must pay fors, the want to pay fors, and then we moved up the rung to debt retirement, and every one of those people participating, it was very easy for them to think about all the financial burdens that they have. But when we got up about 6 or 7 rungs on this emotional ladder, is really what maybe I should have called it, then I asked them, and this is the hard thing to do, and I understand why this is hard. And I'll ask Julie, really sort of reeling you back in with me on this. What does it feel like, and this is, listeners, what I want you to have this, give yourself this moment of zen, okay? What would it feel like not to have to worry about money anymore? What would it feel like, and I mean that in the literal sense, was your reaction when I said that negative? Okay, if it was, then you got to really be dealing with whatever that was where your initial reaction was skepticism, because that's what's going to keep you poor. That's what's going to keep you in a transactional lifestyle. Just allow yourself one tiny little moment, and I want you to ask yourself emotionally, what would it feel like if every single morning you woke up and you had enough money coming in that you never had to think about paying your bills again for the rest of your life?
Yeah, it's libertas. It's freedom.
Freedom, yeah. So libertas is Latin for freedom. But what does that feel like emotionally? What does it feel like just to have that first rung covered? Maybe you want your first rung to be your car payment. That's fine. Let's say your car payment's $400. You get revenue share coming in, it covers that. Then you get revenue share covering in. You guys get the analogy here. You understand. But what I want you to attach yourselves to is the emotional relief that you would feel not having to ever worry about paying your bills again because your bills were paid off revenue share. Just give yourself a moment to think about that. What does that feel like? Now, here's the funny, I always, people, once they allow themselves the joy of experiencing that, even if it's just for a moment, right? Once you've experienced that emotion of knowing what a burden all of us face, essentially, we're all sort of born in this life and have to, amongst, the masses of us, we all have to make our own way. And you're always, like Julie and I used to joke, what would happen if everyone was born with enough money to basically pay all their bills for the rest of their life? What would happen to society? I'll give you the answer. Not a damn thing. If people had enough money all the time, they didn't have to actually stress and strain, and they didn't have to improve, nothing that would get created. Nope. People would find other diversions that would be mostly negative. Mm-hmm. So having to earn money and having to be of service to people actually helps people to improve and helps society to improve. And obviously there's some bumps in the road, but in essence, it's sort of a magical, almost mystical thing that exists, that we're all born with nothing and we have to basically make our own way. And in doing so, we have to, improve ourselves and improve the people and the environments around us. It's kind of a neat thing. But yeah, what if you're ready to get to the point where you have enough money coming in passively, you don't want to have to worry about money again? And what happens if that money then starts to come in? Then what happens is everything in your life changes. And it isn't that you just decide just to become a bridge troll or live under your staircase. You then will start feeling free. And then your mind, right? How much of almost like I don't know, what do you want to call it, Julie? An 800-pound gorilla is the obligation to actually, meet all your financial needs. It just becomes normal and natural that you're expecting your life is always going to be like that.
Yeah, you come to accept it.
Right. And what if it's not there anymore? So you can't even understand or relate to I'm asking you to feel an emotion that you can't conjure up. Right? Because you've never
There's
actually...
no familiarity with it.
Right. Maybe when you were a little kid, like Zoe's age, right?
Yeah.
Where all it's just about playing.
Yeah.
But what happens as an adult when people get there, they don't stop working. They start working in different ways and different levels.
Well, see, this brings up my memory of that event in Texas in 2018 is seeing agent after agent doing their 10 or 15-minute talk about exactly what you just said, that they had achieved that. And how unbelievably life-changing that was. And this was not like, I've got 50 grand a month, 100 grand a month coming in. This was like, for most of them, they were all different levels, but for many of them, it was the equivalent of one deal.
Yeah, I'd say.
Consistently more than what they had been doing per month. And we know from coaching agents for all of eternity that most agents that survive more than 12 or 18 months figure out how to cover their basic overhead.
And that's it.
And this is why they don't save. It's why they get behind on taxes. It's because they've basically figured out how to pay for their basic monthly overhead, right?
So just take a pause there because it's a point worth making. Yeah. So if you're wondering why your business isn't going forward and why you're making the same amount of money every year, it's because you are essentially working to the exact amount of money you need to pay your bills plus a little bit. But what you're not taking into account is everything around you is getting more expensive. That's right. So you've conditioned yourself to basically do 2 transactions per month or 1 transaction or whatever the hell the number is to make it so that you keep what you have, right? Because it's a psychological fact that you're more motivated by the fear of loss than you are motivated by gaining something. So all of us are going to be more motivated by earning enough money that we can keep our houses and our cars and our cell phones, right? So what happens is you then condition yourself just to earn that amount of money plus a little bit. And that's if you even make it past the first 18 months in real estate. Yes. So if you're wondering how you go to the next level, the way you go to the next level financially and personally, there's a lot of things we teach you in coaching, but the primary thing is get something external to your own efforts to cover your own personal bills and then still sell real estate. But then with the money that you're making from selling real estate, you can of course have fun. You can, of course, then start spoiling your family and yourself more. You can start doing different things with your life. But the reality of it is, how else are you going to do it if it isn't for the blessings that basically EXP Realty has become for, what is it now? Over 40,000 agents.
I know, it's amazing.
I was looking at statistics. Did I tell you this? EXP when we started EXP, I think, I wish I remember these numbers. I think last year, I do remember, it was like 23 or 24,000 agents rolling into this year. Now it's over 40,000. Now, and next year the projections are for over 100,000. But you're thinking, well, that's a huge number. Well, the biggest brokerage in the history of brokerages at its peak was KW at 160,000. So EXP Realty could hypothetically could do what KW took 30 years to do, and they'll have done it effectively within probably maybe 8. And why?
Amazing.
It's why? I mean, the EXP is not even a consumer brand, right? Consumers don't know what EXP Realty is. They're not spending any money on developing brand awareness. There's no red, white, and blue balloons flying over your local parades, and they're not going to either. The reason that EXP Realty is the game changer for this industry is because of what they do for agents, because they're actually sharing revenue. They're making it so agents can do what they normally do, which is selling real estate, and then they get the stock, and then they get the revenue share. And we're not even touching on all the other advantages of being with the company. So you can actually build wealth, have retirement, have passive income, have equity in an incredible company, and you don't really have to change what you're already doing, assuming you're moderately successful.
No, you have to put your license somewhere. We're not asking you to change everything that you do. You're still going to do your deals. You're still going to, figure out your numbers. You're still going to probably be in coaching. You're going to do all the things you normally do. You're just going to have a lot more benefits as a result, because the difference with the XP is it reinvests in the agents.
Well, they're giving the money back to the agents. The agents
saying.
can essentially have financial
ownership.
Security and wealth. I know.
Yes, and back to what we were talking about, where you have your living expenses covered. What that does is it doesn't just buy you financial freedom. It's amazing what I've seen with the mental, spiritual, and business freedom that comes.
Well,
next.
health too, really, and family.
Yeah.
That's really a critical point.
I love hearing agents say. One of our coaching clients was like, "You're not going to believe what I'm giving my husband for Christmas," and I'm like, "Do tell." And she I can't remember, some really fancy big truck, and she goes, "And I paid cash for it." And it was like thrilling. It was amazing. Like probably 3 years ago, she wouldn't have even imagined doing that.
Yeah.
So, and some of the other, the other fun one is the first time they see their revenue share and they're like, where'd that come from?
I know.
And then they realize they're also going to get it next month and the month after that.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
And it almost always goes up every month.
Yeah.
But the
cool.
thing I like doing too is not only that, is I like to show them how to log into Enterprise and then how to actually look up to see how much equity they have in the company.
It's amazing.
I've done that dozens of times because agents don't think like,
I don't even think to look for it.
I sold 20 houses this year. And I said, well, did you see what your equity in the company was? What do you mean? Well, they've been giving you, $400 to the VXPI stock for, what these normal and you were buying stock at a discount, the program you signed, and then you log them in, you see how much money it is. And, okay, now take that and multiply that times today's close price. And they're like, what?
I know, it's awesome. It's amazing.
I had somebody on that Zoom, actually. I had people starting to post up what their equity in the company was. And a lot of these people had like 50, 60,000, but there were quite a few that had hundreds of thousands. Like some of our icon agents that basically they get their cap back in the form of VXPI stock. And if they've been in EXP for 2 years, because they joined when we joined, and they were able to buy that stock originally at like $8, $7, now it's in the 70s. And they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in EXPI stock.
That's awesome.
Now, see, like somebody listening right now, Tim, it's an MLM. Tim, it's this, the other thing. Look, whatever. But did I mention the fact that it's going to pay you multiple different ways, and this is going to create alternative financial paths for you forward?
Off of the work you're already doing.
So why are you offended? Honestly, the handful of you, what the rest of you are thinking. Tim, shut up and stop worrying about what the minority are saying. And I will, and I am. Okay, and I heard what you said, so I'll stop talking about the minority. But I do feel sorry for them, truthfully.
They'll come around.
Right.
When they have a personal connection, maybe because they talk to you or they talk to me or some of our coaching clients, and they feel more personally connected to it. Maybe it's because they actually take the time to research what we're talking about is absolutely 100% correct, honest, and based on what you're already doing in life. And the thing that I have to emphasize too is that the agents that we know, whether they're coaching clients or just colleagues of ours, that have done that, the freedom part, it didn't take them forever. This is not like you have to go and, you'll never make it there unless you recruit 500 agents. Well, I'm not a recruiter.
But how else are you going to do it, listeners? Seriously, you can do it through rental properties? I mean, trust me, Julie and I have dozens. We have dozens of those damn things. And if we had all do over again, I still wrestle with this, honestly. I don't think we would. buy any
I
rental
know
properties?
because I dealt with 2 flooded basements last week.
Yeah, Julie's the property manager on a handful of them.
Yeah,
but they're
no.
And it's money jail too.
I mean, in comparison, it doesn't even compare.
But back when we were kids,
there was no opportunity like that for us.
right? That was it. The path forward was basically buying rental properties,
Yeah, that's
and
what we
holding
did.
them, having them paid off, and then basically living off the cash flow. Well, we did that by the time we were in our early
Yeah.
40s. But that whole investment thesis sucks.
It takes too long. It's not
But
passive.
It's not passive, but it's
Yeah.
more than that. The property taxes are going up.
Yeah.
Your ability to manage your own property, if your property happens to be in some area where now you're not allowed to, there's eviction moratoriums for whatever reason, well, then you can't even manage your own property in the sense of managing its cash flow.
Lots of baggage.
There's lots of baggage. And we have properties in Texas. In Texas, property taxes are definitely going to go up. You guys think all these little cities and states, they don't have the Fed, they don't have their local, printing press. They can't just produce more money. They're going to raise property taxes. It's going to happen. In California and all these other areas, it's like, oh my gosh. So out goes the window of the thesis.
Yeah.
So for us to have, right now, in all reality, for us to basically, you have to have 30, 40, maybe right in there rental properties, because you're never going to have some of them. I'll break the numbers down for you guys. Julie and I are preaching to the choir here, but I want to explain it. So if you have 30 rental properties, and let's say the rental properties are all paid off, and let's say each of these rental properties are worth, let's pick a number, Julie, 175?
I'd say 200 now.
Okay, so that's $6 million in real estate.
Right.
So right there, for you to have $6 million to buy all these properties, many of you will never be able to do it because you're never going to have that much money. You're going to basically have to come up with a down payment. You're going to hope and pray that basically after your expenses, you're going to break even on the payment, and then you're going to have some sort of long form calculator that shows you after 14 years, then you're going to start making a couple $100, and then you're going to start convincing yourself, well, the house will appreciate. Well, maybe it will, but if you borrow the money against the house, then you're having to pay that loan back, which means you're basically now screwing your cash flow again because you're having to make that payment. Well, Tim, the tenant will pay the property. Well, then you've negated the whole benefit of, guys get the point. It's like a circular argument. The whole idea that real estate, highly leveraged real estate is a home run. The older you get, the less debt you want. I mean, there's different people that say that you should have no debt by the time you're 45 or 50. I think some of that's true, but I also think if you can borrow money for less than 3%, having that money in an asset. But let me finish the point.
Okay.
So if you had 30 properties that were all paid off that are worth $6 million, let's just, like I said a second ago, the money's in money jail. You can't really get at it unless you borrow against it, and then you have to pay to use your money. Or you can sell it, but then if you have to sell it, you have to then pay recapture, and you have to pay, your profit or tax on the profit, and it's ugly. And now you can 1031 it in another property, but then maybe
you're back in the same.
Now you're back in. Okay, so if you have 30 properties, here's what your average net per property is going to be, and this is if they're worth $200,000. And I'm speaking 100% from our own spreadsheet. You're going to be making about $1,000 per property.
Yeah. That's after property tax and some management fees, but not much. Maybe an HOA
right
in there, but on average, you'll end up at about $1,000.
But Tim, you have the appreciation and you have the depreciation. I get that. So the three benefits of real estate are appreciation, depreciation, and depreciation,
cash flow,
and cash flow. Yeah. So if you have 30 properties. Now, you might have a very low vacancy rate. Let's say you have 3 that are vacant, but you're going to have a certain percent of those that are always going to be bleeding you dry for money. It's going to be the flooded basements. It's going to be the roof that needs replaced. It's going to be so you're making $30,000 a month, but your actual net profit from that, when you take out the expenses of managing those properties, the real expenses, is probably realistically going to be, what do you think, about half that, maybe like high teens, 15, 16,000?
Maybe a little bit more than half, but I mean, it depends a lot on vacancy and stuff
right.
like that. But yeah, it's not going to be $30,000. I'll tell you that.
And what you're seeing now is your carrying costs of the properties in most of the states, because the increasing property taxes and HOAs and insurances and all these other things are starting to outpace your ability to raise the rents. So your actual
That's
return,
absolutely true.
Your return on investment is actually decreasing. So look. the whole conversation for most of you, it starts and ends with the fact that you can never save up enough money to basically even live off paid off cash flow properties, right? So let's just be realistic.
That's problem one. Problem two is you're hard pressed to find a decent rental property for $200,000 anywhere in the country right now. There's a few markets that you still can.
It is very difficult.
It's getting harder. I mean, finding inventory at all, even for your real estate clients, much less yourself, has become much more difficult than when we were doing it.
Right. But so you go back to the premise of that Glenn had, right?
Yeah.
Why is that agents basically never retire? It's because most agents don't have the ability to purchase rental properties, just for a whole host of reasons. But the ones that the thing we just said should be evidence to you, or at least give you the breadcrumbs to really start thinking about that investment thesis, because that's the one that we were born and raised on. And now that we're at the other end of that bridge, we could add more rental properties. You could hear the sort of emotional turmoil that we we still go through, because that's how we're pre-programmed to think, right? Buy more rental properties, buy more rental properties. But I'm looking now at this EXP revenue share thing, and I'm thinking to myself, why the hell would I want to buy more rental properties?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
No, and you're only talking about the financial aspect. There's also a mental and emotional aspect. Like, if you're going to spend an hour on the phone, wouldn't you rather be helping agents versus, negotiating with a roofer?
Right.
Or whatever. Choose your poison. But, I think, use that analogy, but you can get there so much faster with
revenue share.
And that's without you being like a rock star recruiter or having to increase the number of homes that you're selling by very much, or maybe even keep it the same.
Our revenue share, okay, so this is a stone cold fact, and I'm not going to give you guys numbers because frankly I don't think I'm supposed to, but our personal revenue share from EXP is almost, it's actually, let me think, it's almost double basically, right, what we make from having all those rental properties that it took you and I decades to acquire. I mean, isn't that amazing to think? And we've done that in less than 2 years.
It's incredible. And we're absolutely not the only story like that.
No, no way.
About us.
Tons
it's about
of people.
All of you guys.
Right. And you don't have to have the number one listened to daily podcast and be have influence and all that, because there's people that are making millions of dollars from EXP that you've never heard of. And the only thing that they did is they scheduled themselves time every single week to have intentional conversations about recruiting people into EXP. And when they do it, and then they basically have those people do so. Look, you're going to sponsor 10 people, maybe 2 of them want to build meaningful revenue share. Well, that's fantastic, because when those 2 add 10 and those 2, and yes, guys, it is a recruiting model, but that's not this pointing into the spear with EXP. The real benefit of the brokerage is the brokerage itself. You can participate in EXP, and you can never even give 2 wits about revenue share or about the stock. And there's a lot of people that basically love the brokerage. And look, for the most part, it's going to pay, the commission split's going to be advantageous, obviously compared to whatever you're paying now. But the community, the sense of adventure that we're all on is, in the formation of probably what's going to be the world's largest real estate brokerage in history. That's what's truly exciting. And if you're looking for like constant motivation, if you're looking to be around positive, energized people, well, that's what you want. You want to be part of you want to be part of the ship that's going to go to Mars, not some sinking ship that's basically floating somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, Yeah. I mean, so that's what's so many exciting things and that, I guess, as I was listening to you talk before about, people's sort of, dug in philosophies or approaches to life that essentially the unintended consequences of, for example, of not, at least taking this opportunity seriously. I feel at this point in my life, I am not able to say I don't care about the people who are like, I know some people, they get to the point where they say like, well, if they don't want to listen, I just don't care. I can never say that.
No,
I can't.
You know what? I think some of it is, for a lot of our listeners, they spend a lot of time and energy making their current brokerage decision, even if that was 10 years ago. And by having to think of something new, that can create some uncomfortable feelings, because it's almost like they subconsciously feel like they're criticizing their previous programming that they made that decision.
Well, I understand that. It's ego.
Well, it is. I mean, they don't feel it that way, but that's kind of the internal consternation. But to that, I would say you're being really, kind of irresponsible by not thinking bigger again in your life, in your career. You probably did make a great decision back then.
That's right.
With the tools that you had to make it with and the circumstances, just like when we bought our rental property, that's what we had to work with. I'm glad we have them now. Wouldn't do it again. That doesn't mean that past Tim and Julie were stupid. It just means that at the time we made the best decision that we could with the tools that we had.
Right.
Now, listeners, you have different tools, different models. a totally different game that you can be in. And to not at least examine that and understand it, I think is kind of irresponsible to yourself, your family, and your financial future. Because if you stay on the track that you're on, I'm just telling you, it's going to take longer.
You'll never do it. They won't do it at all. They won't do it. How many people do you know in real estate that ever retire? They don't retire.
No. And business, here's the other myth. I'll just sell my business.
Right.
That doesn't happen either.
No, there is no selling of your business.
That's a myth.
Selling real estate doesn't make you rich. It's what comes from the profits from selling real estate that make you rich. I mean, that's something we've been saying forever. But the reality of it is if you align with EXP and you just take, some level of action when you're at the company, you're then going to have multiple things. Remember our spokes in the wheel analogy? We talk about different spokes in the wheel that are all each spoke represents a source of business. We've been talking about that in our normal podcast. Well, the fact is that you also need to scale that up and think of your spokes in the wheel and those spokes representing sources of income. And that's what we talk about in Harris Rules. So I'll give you for example. Let's say you're at EXP. You're selling real estate just like you are. And let's say you're not going to sell any more than what you sold last year. But you're making more because the commission splits are better. You're making more because you're essentially increasing your net worth because you're getting equity in the company. You're increasing your cash flow because you're getting revenue share, right? So now let's say you're still selling real estate and all the while these other spokes are creating more sources of net worth and cash flow for you. Don't spend that money or don't stop selling real estate. Don't sell the stock and stop selling real estate, or don't spend the cash flow. I use the house analogy as a for example, but what I personally suggest to all of the people that are in our group called Libertas is we suggest that they take that money and then they start investing the money from their revenue share, and you can invest that into things like that are dividend paying stocks. You can go to Vanguard and you can buy index funds that are dividend paying, meaning you then are going to invest in something that costs you virtually nothing to purchase. A Vanguard index fund, and there's lots of them that pay dividends. And some of the dividends they pay are like 6% annually. So now what you're doing is you've got a source of income from selling real estate. You've got a source of income from, the equity that you're getting in the company, EXP. You're getting source of income from the revenue share. But now you're being smart and you're taking that revenue share money and you're investing that in something else that's also truly passive, which is dividend paying equity. And, you're buying stock in essentially companies that pay dividends. A dividend is where they're giving you a portion of the profit that they make. And some of them pay quarterly, some of them pay monthly, some of them pay twice a year. But now you're creating more multiple spokes of income, and you're creating the further out from your original source of income, which is selling real estate, the less work those spokes require.
So wait a minute. So you're saying when your money is starting to work for you?
And you no longer have to work for your money. And that's the definition of rich. Mm-hmm. Right. And I remember Julie and I were blessed to have an early mentor. This was back in the 90s. And I asked him once, and he was a billionaire. He's passed. And I asked him once, how is it that I knew enough about him to know that he was just basically a farm boy from Indiana. And, we met him at a Howard Brinton event, and he was telling me that what he and his wife started to do, Jim Duvall, mm-hmm. is that they would flip farms. That's what he was doing in Indiana. They'd buy farmland, and he was buying farmland back when many of you won't remember this, back in the early 80s. There was a lot of farms that went into foreclosure and back in different things. So he started buying them regionally in the Midwest, and then he started expanding, and then he started owning things up in Canada and things like that. But what he said ultimately, in order for him to have the money to go buy these assets, because they came from nothing as well, was he had to start setting aside 10% of every dollar that they earned. And then then they would set aside 20%. As they paid off debt, then they'd be able to put more money to an investment. That's the path that Julie and I followed. And I have to tell you, it works. Hell yeah, it works. But it's a lot of freaking sacrifice. It's a lot of discipline. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of belief in something that's going to be so far off in the distant future that you just hope you live long enough to enjoy it. Or when you get there, that you're not so old that you can't enjoy it. I mean, that's in essence the normal path that normal people that aren't born with money have to follow. And you do that through buying rental properties or putting a little bit in the stock market, and you're looking at that report that says 30 years from now you're going to be worth $1 million if you continue to invest this. Well, revenue share gets you to the point where you can be essentially rich, where your money's working for you. You no longer have to work for your money. And I know people that have done it in a year, and 2 years, and 3 years. And here's the thing that's really crazy about EXP: it's just getting started. 40,000 agents at the end of this year, 100,000 agents at the end of next year. Their EXP is now in India, Portugal, Canada, Mexico, France. I'm sure I'm forgetting.
Australia, I think.
They're opening up globally. So this is going to be the largest real estate company with the most real estate agents on planet Earth. And why are so many agents flocking to EXP? For all the reasons that we're stating right now. That's, I have to say, professionally speaking, something I'm incredibly excited about.
Yeah, absolutely one of our best business decisions ever.
Yeah, top 3.
Yeah, and the only regret probably is that maybe we could have done it a little bit sooner, but we were, like some of you, skeptics for a while.
We should have done it sooner.
Until we actually went to an event, we figured it out, we studied the model, and we got it.
Yep.
Big light bulb.
Yeah.
And also, honestly, from a coaching perspective, realized that it fits right into our spokes on the wheel model. And if we knew about this thing and we didn't tell you guys about it, that would kind of make us a little schmucky.
Well, but that's, yeah. I mean, Julie asked me this question when we were coming back from that event in San Antonio. She said, Tim, do you believe this is the best thing for agents? Yes. Tim, do you believe in the model and the people that are running it? Yes. Because the people running the company are all operators, high level operators. And so then she said to me, so if you believe in all that, why wouldn't we do it? And don't you see by us not doing it, you're being a hypocrite? And she didn't say it that concisely, but that was the essence of it. And she was right, and that was that because we were resistant. We were fearful. We had all the ego resistance that so many agents have, but we had a lot to lose. I mean, you guys, if you switch to a broker, you can just switch back. If you switch to EXP and you decide it's not for you, you can just go back. Well, we had thousands of coaching clients, and we were, still do events in different brokerages other than EXP. So we had a lot to lose. We were worried that the backbone of our business would suffer if we aligned with EXP. And you know what? The exact opposite happened.
This is true.
Because people didn't care. The brokerages didn't care. They wanted Julie and I for our message and our coaching and our uniqueness in the marketplace. And Julie has a license and has to hang someplace.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the kind of, I didn't mean to get on this big EXP thing, but that's
but it comes up every day in our daily, how many calls that we both do. It comes up. Of course, we get emails and texts and people being curious, and you have to address it. Right.
And so, look, we would love the opportunity to sponsor you at EXP. You guys can be part of our EXP group called Libertas. And it's super simple. All you got to do is text me directly on my cell phone, which is 512-758-0206. Again, I had rightful criticism from one of you guys last week. Someone texted me. Actually, I'll tell you his name. I got it right here. I think it wasn't Mika. I don't remember. It was Paul. One of you guys texted me and you said, Tim, I was going to join EXP, and I've been listening to you guys talk about EXP, but I hadn't put the pieces together that you guys were actually agents at EXP. And I thought, wow, it's my fault for not making that really clear.
It's because we live in our podcast world. And,
I know.
They're not always clear that we actually do what you guys do too.
Right. Well, we don't sell real estate anymore, but if you guys want to have, if you want to join EXP, if you want to discuss EXP, if you want to look at that as a really good financial turning point in your life for 2021 going forward, text me directly at 512-758-0206.
This is a great time of year to do it too.
Heck
because, the rest of the world, and I know, I work right through the holidays. So first of all, what are you thinking? It's okay to take some downtime. But the rest of the world doesn't really expect you to be quite as frosty over this next 2 weeks or so. And this historically has been the time that you guys like to make that switch. So it's okay. It's a little bit less disruptive, and it's a great way to start next year.
Right. So just text me directly at 512-758-0206. If you've got a big brokerage and you're worried about your expenses switching, text me. We've got a plan for you to help you out with that. Text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. Julie, you want to talk about any of our wacky news, or you want to give us a break?
We can save it up for after Christmas. It's okay.
Okay.
Because our next Sunday show will be after Christmas.
Right. That's if we feel like doing a story or podcast after. We probably will.
That's okay. It's
yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
All good.
So, look, we did have some funny news stories, but we're going to hold those off. Was there none that you wanted to share just to kind of round the bend in a holiday sense?
Well, we talked about the Christmas star. Let's see.
Oh, you know what? No, this one was hilarious. But you know what? We should save that one, though.
Well, okay. This kind of affects them. Go to the Zoom suit.
You want to talk about this?
Because I thought it was a great business idea and kind of silly and weird.
All right, go for
it. Japan's where's the headline? Pajama suit helps teleworkers look good for Zoom calls. In Tokyo, want to look good for a Zoom meeting but don't want to get too dressed up, a Japanese apparel company has created a pajama suit that's meant to resemble office attire but feel as snug as sleepwear. So we've seen some really weird stuff.
No, I'm liking this. Keep reading.
I know, right?
I could
Aoki
rock that.
Holdings is marketing the navy, beige, and black and dark gray suits for both men and women to teleworkers as more than pajamas and less than fashionable clothes. Sold as suit separates, the jackets are knit cardigans and can be mixed and matched with elastic waist pants designed for sitting for long periods. All items in the collection cost about $50 a piece each in Aoki's online store. The pajama suit highlights the ways clothing makers are trying to adapt as they struggle. So here's an example of a pandemic-produced company, right? And I just thought that was kind of...
Actually, I'm going to have you read this story because I just thought this was awesome. So if you guys want more signs that we're ending the craziest year ever.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here's going to be one. Well, we could talk about aliens, but let's hold that one off.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, the only only zany, crazy prediction that didn't come true that Julie and I had after COVID was that there was going to be alien visitation. But you know what?
It's too soon to tell.
It's too soon to tell because there's more stories coming out from around the country of people claiming to see aliens.
Yes, and if you live in New York City, your aliens, your suspected alien sightings are up 248% since 2018. So just saying. Okay. Belgian racing pigeon New Kim sells for a record 1.4 million, I think that's
euros.
Euros. No, that's pounds.
Oh, that's
in
pounds.
Mystery bidding war between somebody named Super Duper and Hitman.
Okay, stop.
Yes.
So I'm looking at a picture of a very handsome looking pigeon. I'll give you that.
A racing pigeon.
And he's a racing pigeon. But did you notice he actually has three racing stripes?
I know,
and he has a green head to make them shiny. Okay, so this thing sold for 1.4 million pounds, which I'm going to guess is probably close to $2 million.
For one bird. A female racing pigeon from Belgium called New Kim has been sold for a record 1.6 million euros, 1.4 million pounds to a mystery Chinese buyer at an online auction. During a frantic final 30 minutes at the end of a 2-week auction at the PIPA, which is a Belgian auction house there's an auction house for racing pigeons.
Of course.
2 Chinese bidders operating under the pseudonym Super Duper and Hitman drove up the price. Super Duper got the bird and is said to be the same wealthy Chinese industrialist who already has a male pigeon, Armando, dubbed the Lewis Hamilton of the sport. If you guys don't know who Lewis Hamilton is, he wins Formula One races. So apparently this is a very racy pigeon. He sold for 1.25 million euros last year, and it's thought both birds may be used by the unnamed buyer for breeding.
What the hell else is he going to do with them?
Why not, right?
What's he going to do, eat them?
I know. So, and the amazing thing is that there was more than one bidder.
I know.
Something like this.
New Kim started at 200 pounds on November 2nd, but rose to a bid of 1.3 million pounds from a South African who grew up within 90 minutes. I don't know the rest of the story. Oh my gosh, it goes on and on. So there's more examples of pigeons selling for tons of money.
Well, you were talking about different asset classes last week when we were saying that people are investing in.
That's the reason I thought it was funny.
This wasn't maybe the first thing that would come to mind, but it is for them, maybe.
But this actually goes to the predictions thing that we're working on, and one of the
futures.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're going to start seeing is more inflation and housing that's going to cause, obviously prices to rise, and virtually every other industry is going to suffer as a result of inflation, except all of you listeners, because as houses increase in cost, your commissions are going to increase right along with them.
That's right.
So we're the only industry that's really truly going to benefit from inflation.
You have a raise baked into what you do,
which is amazing. And the the other thing you're seeing is you're going to start seeing, and because of inflation, and we're going to be talking about this more on our predictions podcast, is coming from all the Fed printing all this money and all this other stuff that's happening. But assuming it doesn't become hyperinflation, the inflationary time, if you position yourself well, you can do incredibly well. I just told you guys about EXP. That would be a smart move. But as far as like inflation, it also shows up in things like racing pigeons, or it'll show up in collectibles. And some of you are saying, well, Tim, I'm not an art buyer. But what I'm suggesting to you, it's not just things that the highfalutiners are buying. It's everything else is going to start inflating in cost too. Like used cars now are selling for the highest percent close to original price as they have since, like, I think it was the 50s or something.
And some of them for more than their original.
Yeah, a lot of cars are selling normal cars, not just limited edition whatnots, but normal cars. And you're seeing, like, if you wanted to order any kind, like we bought that cabin in Murphy, North Carolina. I was shopping for some UTV to take Julie and Zoe and my mom, actually, which will be hilarious, out in the woods in this crazy thing, Yep. And it's like 4 to 6 weeks. And I said, well, what do you have used? And used sells for more than what the new one would cost.
I know, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
I mean, our friends moving here that need golf carts are having to wait for delivery on those.
Like 3 months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And so you could sell your used golf cart, which, is you can sell for more than a new one because people don't want to wait.
Supply and demand.
But what's not yet happened is the manufacturers aren't yet increasing prices, but they will as soon as their hard costs increase. Mm-hmm. And you're reading stories about inflation of building supplies and all these other things. But look, we'll meander into those waters on a future podcast. But in the meantime, Julie, I love you.
I love you too. And
Merry Christmas. And all of you guys, thank you for continuing to make this #1 listen to daily podcast in the nation. Julie, I think what we're going to do for our special, Christmas, I don't know what you want to call it, card for all of our podcast listeners. And I'm going to task you with this. You know what I'm going to say.
We're going to have Zoe sing, aren't we?
I want you to have Zoe sing, and we'll do a video, and
Zoe.
we'll share it. Elf Zoe, but you're going to have to get her super, cleaned up.
Elfed up.
You're going to have to make her look less feral.
Yes, I know. She has a little bit gone to seed this week.
That's right.
As soon as school was over.
And we'll send that out to everyone. What do you think she'll want to sing?
It's probably going to be Rudolph.
Yeah.
She's pretty good at Silent Night, but Rudolph's a little bit more upbeat. So
yeah, that's true.
And she knows all 3 verses.
There
so you've been warned.
All right. Well, God bless all of you guys. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We're going to put in another podcast or 2 on predictions next week. But other than that, we'll talk with you after the holiday.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.